always told me that if you wanted to know where you're going, you have to know where you're coming from. The same logic applies to the future of censorship. Will we evolve for the better or for the worse? Before we answer that question though, let's take a look back on the history of censorship. According to a rough timeline by the CRTC, here's where it all started. The government forms the Royal Commission. It's to study broadcasting in Canada and its future. The first TV station airs in Montreal, owned and operated by CKAC and La Presse newspaper. The Canadian Broadcasting Act is established. It later leads to the future creation of the CRTC. Jumping ahead a few years, the CBC is formed. The Fowler Committee is assembled. It urges the government to define expectations and set objectives for broadcasting. And a year later, the government announces new policies on color TV. According to Herbert Forrestal, author of Banned in the Media, growing political pressures was the early cause of censorship in the 1940s. It could also be thanks to Senator McCarthy and his out-of-control communist allegations in the U.S.
The CBSC has a violence code which sets the ground rules for children's programming. The code emphasizes the importance of parents being involved in their children's viewing choices. Broadcasters and regulators are encouraged to provide viewers with adequate information so that their viewing choices are made in light of that information. When it comes to violence, the code states that it should not be portrayed unless it is essential to the development of the character and/or the plot. As for cartoons, violence is acceptable as long as it's non-realistic. Power Rangers was one of the shows that became a precedent because it focused on problem solving through violence only. However, we all watched it growing up, and we all turned out just fine. As long as parents talk to their kids about the programs and emphasize the point that a lot of it is make-believe, then kids should be okay. Also, violent programming isn't a main nor a direct reason for children being violent as adults. Other factors like the household they grow up in and bullying are more likely to affect a child than a cartoon.
It's not only parents, it's not only advocates, it's not only broadcasters, it's a job that everyone has to do. More and more we've been putting the role on broadcasters, taking it away from parents, but I think that in society it has to be a group of people doing this. Everyone's responsible for what we show our children or not.
The CRTC's website mentions some tools that help parents control their children's viewing. First, there's the on-screen ratings. English language broadcasters use the Action Group on Violence on Television classification system, while the French language broadcasters use the Régie du Cinéma du Québec system. Second, there's the V-chip technology, which has been developed to allow parents to block shows in conjunction with the ratings. The chip does sound like a good idea. However, a study showed that a lot of mothers had trouble using the technology, whereas fathers showed frustration towards having to activate and deactivate the chip every time they wanted to watch television. The V-chip also doesn't differentiate between acceptable and unacceptable portrayals of violence and sex. For example, the TV set will go blank if there's a scene with the man taking off his shirt. Finally, the studies showed that children generally prefer programs that are made for them, so the V-chip is really a tool that filters what children may accidentally see rather than what they want to see.
Here's a fun fact. Over 80% of American homes subscribe either to cable or satellite TV, but only broadcast television, which is technically free, is subject to indecency regulation. The media industry fears that new rules could damage its business model. The Economist magazine. Now, I don't want to get too much into the business aspect of things, but this is true. Too many regulations and red tape is never a good thing. If more laws are implemented towards television, then what makes us any different from those we criticize? Now, don't get me wrong, we do need some boundaries, but we need to think about what's more important in life. World hunger, or making sure Cartman on South Park cuts down on his goddammits in a half hour. I'll let you decide.
I guess, as I was discussing in some of the classes that I teach, we were saying that maybe we've gone too far, but it's not the actual broadcasters who are censoring too far, it's where society is making us censor or not.
Reporters Without Borders is a website dedicated to anything about the press. If you go on the website, you'll find something very interesting. The ranking of countries based on their censorship liberties. Here's what I found out. European countries rank highest on the list. This means that Europe is home to some of the countries with the most lenient rules on censorship. The bottom of the list includes many Asian countries. This means that these places are home to the most strict government-controlled censorship laws. And where's Canada? Out of 175 countries, Canada ranked number 19. Did you think we'd be higher up? Now isn't that strange? Canada, a country so much for freedom of expression and speech and press, didn't even make the top 10. What does that say about our policies and our actual stance on these freedoms? There are many activist groups out there to promote safe programming. Now, the most noted one would be the Parents Television Council in the US. Not only does it seem that they constantly have a new cause to fight, but they themselves have not been getting the warmest of reactions towards their cause. Here is a closer look at the council and some answers they have given to their most popular questions. Their mission? To promote and restore responsibility and decency to the entertainment industry in answer to America's demand for positive, family-oriented television programming. And how do they do this? By fostering changes in TV programming to make the early hours of primetime family-friendly and suitable for viewers of all ages. Here are some answers from the PTC to some frequently asked questions on their site. Isn't it the responsibility of the parents and not the council? Their answer? Parental responsibility is the beginning, not the end of the story. Okay. If you don't like something on TV, why don't you just change the channel? Their answer? Opting out is an entirely inadequate response. Just changing the channel means that you've accepted what's on that channel, and you've just admitted to being powerless. Actually, if other people change the channel, the ratings go down, and the show gets canceled.
So we've taken a look back at a brief history of censorship. We've also looked at the CBSC and CRTC and the roles they played in Canadian broadcast policy making,
as well as the Parents Television Council, and we had some words of wisdom from one of our very own professors here at the University of Ottawa.
We both agree that Canada does need some form of censorship, because who really wants to see or have their kids come across scenarios like rape and hard drug use on primetime television?
However, censorship has to stop at a certain point. We need boundaries, but not an iron curtain. Parents and other members of society, as well as broadcasters, need to take an active role in kids' viewing habits. This means explaining to kids that what they see on TV is make-believe and not real.
Parents need to differentiate to their kids what is appropriate and what is not. As kids grow older, they become more curious and more aware of what is going on. It is better to sit with your kids and explain what is going on rather than shielding them, because they will find a way to access the material without your presence.